So the Utah Jazz last year were one of the biggest surprises in the league, as many people, including myself, expected them to be one of the worst teams in the league. But instead, they were extremely competitive and they almost made the play-in tournament. And I gotta say, after last season, I have gained a tremendous amount of respect for this team. And in today's video, I'm going to explain why this team can in fact make the playoffs this upcoming season, and why this team has such a bright future ahead of them. But before we do get started, please go ahead and hit that like button if you guys end up enjoying this video, because it really does help out the channel. And of course, subscribe if you guys are new and you guys enjoy content like this. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get this video started. Now, there's no better starting point than talking about their best player in Lauri Markkanen. I mean, last year, he was absolutely amazing, and Lauri Markkanen was a guy that a lot of people had given up on, and admittedly, I honestly did give up on him before the 2023 season. I didn't think he'd ever reach that all-star potential many people thought he had, but he proved so many people wrong. Instead, he averaged 26 points per game and 9 rebounds per game last year on amazing efficiency. And he played like a legit all-star, and if I remember correctly, he did make the team. And I mean, he proved that he's more than just a stretch four. I mean, he was a guy who could create his own shot, and he was scoring at all three levels. And the Utah Jazz, while they were by no means a top 3 seed in the West, they did exceed expectations, as I said before. So his play, it did contribute to some winning. So yeah, man, Lauri Markkanen, he was absolutely phenomenal last year. He won Most Improved Player, which he 100% deserved, and the man is only 26 years old, so he's in his prime, and he should be a great franchise player for the Jazz for a few years. And Utah definitely has a really nice building block in Lauri Markkanen. But besides Lauri Markkanen, you do have Walker Kessler, who last year was one of the best rookies last year. He was, solid offensively while being extremely good defensively. Last season, he did average 9 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 2 blocks per game. And he did that in just 23 minutes per game. And while I don't think he has superstar potential by any means, I do think Walker Kessler does have solid potential. I think he could be a really good starting center in the NBA one day. Maybe he's like a lower level all-star or like a mid-level all-star. I could very well see that. Walker Kessler was absolutely amazing, and I think he is going to take a big leap in 2024. Moving on, you also do have Jordan Clarkson. He's a veteran guy, and I'll be honest, I've never really been the biggest Jordan Clarkson fan per se, but I do think he is a solid player. He's a very good scorer, not a whole lot outside of being a good scorer. But again, there is value in being able to obviously score the ball, because the team that gets them the most points wins the basketball game. But yeah, Jordan Clarkson, great scorer, and I think he does provide that level of veteran leadership that you do need on young teams. So yeah, not a bad player by any means. Colin Sexton, he's a guy who he's a young guy who I don't really think has all-star level potential per se. But I do think he can be a good sixth man. Along with that, you do have Kelly Olynyk, who's a good stretch big, nothing more than that. And then you got Ochai Agbaji, and Ochai Agbaji coming out of the 2022 draft, I believe. Yeah, the 2022 draft. I thought he had I didn't really think he had superstar potential, but I thought he had like a pretty high floor and like an okay ceiling. I think he would come into the league immediately and become a good 3-and-D wing, and he was fine last year. I do think he will get a lot more opportunity this upcoming season, and I do think he will take a big leap as a result. So Ochai Agbaji, he won't be a superstar by any means in my opinion, but he should be quite a solid player. But along with the players, we should also give a lot of credit to Will Hardy. Will Hardy, in his first season as Utah's head coach, he was extremely good. I mean, he built a really good winning culture. He had this team competing night in and night out. He was really instrumental in Lauri Markkanen breaking out and winning MIP last year. And again, Utah, they exceeded expectations, and a large part of it was because of Will Hardy. I mean, Will Hardy did a fantastic job last year, and I do think that that one day he could win Coach of the Year if the Jazz do make the playoffs or surprise some people this upcoming year. Now, the Jazz had one of the best off seasons in the league last year, if you ask me. During the off season, they traded for John Collins, and John Collins, we know in Atlanta he developed into a solid player, and a lot of people thought he had all-star potential, and for a few years I thought he would eventually make that all-star leap, but unfortunately, he never made that all-star leap, and honestly, last year, he was legitimately bad, I cannot lie. So, Utah, they traded for him, and they really did not give up a whole lot to acquire John Collins, and if you ask me, I like the trade for them. Yeah, I know he wasn't very good last year, he did hit a wall in Atlanta, and, he does have a massive contract, but that said, John Collins is still, I want to say, 25 years old or so. He's 25 years old now that I remember. Yeah, he is approaching his prime, but I do think that he maybe could, take an all-star leap now that he does have a fresh start. We saw what Will Hardy did with Lauri Markkanen. Maybe he can do the same thing with John Collins, but even if he doesn't make that leap into all-star status, I do think that he could get back to being a solid player like he was in years past. So, again, not very good last year for John Collins. John Collins just wasn't very good last year, but I do think that he should be able to bounce back this upcoming season. Along with that, they made several nice additions in the draft. You got Taylor Hendricks, who was one of the best players in this past year's NBA draft at the 9th overall pick. He's a guy who I think can space the floor, and he is a terrific defender with really good versatility. Who knows how good he's going to be in his first year, but even if he isn't anything amazing in his first season, I do think eventually he can be an absolutely amazing player. Along with that, they drafted Keontae George, who's just a really good scorer, and Bryce Sensabaugh, who's also another bucket. And these two guys, like Taylor Hendricks, I'm unsure about the kind of opportunity that they get in their rookie years. There's a good chance that these guys maybe don't do a whole lot their rookie year, but I do think that, again, in the future, they could become something. But I will say, while I did love Utah's offseason, one thing I do wish the Jazz did is, get a good playmaking point guard, because as it stands right now, a lot of their guards, they're very good scorers, but they lack a good playmaker, and I think that was also a big issue last year. They didn't really have a good playmaking point guard once they traded away Mike Conley to the Minnesota Timberwolves. But with that said, as I said before, I think they had a really good offseason. They added a lot of young talent, and they got a player in John Collins who is still capable of very good play, and he maybe could take a leap into being an all-star. We'll have to see about that. But when you look at the Jazz, they won 37 games last year and were the 12th seed, and they almost made the play-in tournament. And given their off-season additions, plus the pieces they already have, and the fact that I think Ochai Agbaji and Walker Kessler will take big leaps this upcoming year, I think they should be able to add on to that win total and potentially make the play-in tournament, or be a lower playoff seeded team. I think it's very possible that they get 40 to 46 wins and achieve that type of seeding. I know the Western Conference has a lot of good teams, but that said, I think that that right there is very plausible. Plus, when you look at Utah, they've had a really successful rebuild so far. Compared to a lot of other teams who start rebuilds, they are way ahead of schedule. I mean, I really don't think they're that far off from being able to make the playoffs. I think there's a high chance that they make it this year. And they got a really bright future. I mean, they got a ton of assets from the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell trades. You got an all-star in his prime, a few established veteran pieces, a lot of young players with plenty of promise and potential, plus a really good head coach. And I mean, with those picks, they can draft a guy who potentially becomes another franchise player alongside Lauri Markkanen, and eventually turns the Utah into a title contender. Or they can use those draft picks and those young players to trade for an established star if one becomes available, and they could, use that to eventually reach contender status. But either way, if you're a Utah Jazz fan, I would feel excited about this season. I think they're going to be take a leap, and yeah, this team has a really bright road ahead of them. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. It really does mean a lot. Again, like, subscribe, do all of that. And check out my new podcast and my social media. The links to all three of them will be in the description below. But yeah, without further ado, I'm out, you guys.